everyone. I'll just give people one more minute. Hi, one more minute to join us.
Hi, Kim. Nice to talk to you. I've seen a lot of stuff you've done on social.
Yes. Nice to talk to you.
All the work you've done for us, which has been amazing. Thank you so much.
It's been great. And the coaches I've been talking to today think it's fabulous too. So, yeah.
Good.
Amazing. Have you already have it? How many sessions do you have booked?
5, I think, and 1 spare.
Excellent. That's so good.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so great. Sophie's just told us she's having lunch. I hope you're having something very yummy.
Well, I think we should probably get started, seeing as we like to be prompt. Just wanted to say hello, first of all. Welcome, everyone, to our deep dive into challenges faced by women in our network today. If you want to put your camera on, please do. We'd love to see you, but just will be the 3 of us. If not, Malin and I will be chatting to you. So, Malin, did you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. If for those of you who don't know me already, I'm the Director of Fundraising at MicroLoan Foundation. So I work very closely with Hayden and Maria and Sandra to get the Coachathon off the ground, basically. But what I also do is basically work with a fundraising team and our operational teams in sub-Saharan Africa to make sure that we have the money that we need to do the magic that we do, basically, and deliver the work to the women in our countries of operations. So that's really me in a nutshell. Maria.
Great. And I'll just quickly introduce myself as well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Maria Campanini, as you can see. I am fundraising and comms lead here at Microloans. So I look after all of our external comms and some of our donors as well. But in terms of Coachathon, I've been working on the marketing side and a little bit of the organisation too, along with Hayden, Malin and Sandra. So again, thank you for everyone for being here and for getting involved in the WLA Coachathon. We just wanted to set a scene for you before we do dive into those 2 key challenges that Malin and I both wanted to talk about today. So Hayden, if you could please share your screen. We're going to have some beautiful pictures of Mrs Mkonde, who is one of the amazing women in our network. So Mrs Mkonde is the proud mother of 8 children. She lives on the outskirts of Malawi, in Lilongwe in Malawi. So 11 years ago, she set up a small grocery stall selling rice, groundnuts and maize to support her family. She dreamed that her children would once get the education that she never had, but in reality, the family lived in extreme poverty and often went for weeks without food. But this is a positive, happy story. Mrs Mkonde was determined to make a change, and she joined a microloan group way back in 2012 and received extensive business training and a loan of just £22. She had a vision, she had the drive, and fortunately, Microloan was there to help. Over time, her loans grew, she repaid and reinvested, and she used her entrepreneurial training, her coaching and mentoring to turn her stall into a shop. And later, her shop became a mill at the heart of the village. And Hayden, if you could change the slide, we actually have some pictures of her at her mill. There it is. So she's now, as of today, on her 12th loan cycle, 12th. She has a whole team of paid employees, and the mill serves local farmers, local businesses, and has created many jobs in her local community. So let's talk quickly about the impact of her success in building this business empire. Her family and other families in the community no longer face hunger. So they no longer have to miss a meal, and the mothers, like Mrs Mkonde, no longer have to put their children to bed hungry. Also, what's more, Mrs Mkonde's eldest 3 children are currently at college studying nursing, IT and insurance. So she's given them the opportunity to build better lives for themselves too. And it all began way back with a £22 loan from Microloan. So this is what the Coachathon is all about. As you all know, £25 is all it costs for a session, and every £25 fundraise for the Coachathon has the potential to kickstart this journey for another inspiring, amazing woman like Mrs Mkonde. Thanks to your donation, all of those of you in the audience that have already booked your coaching sessions, another woman like Mrs Mkonde will be able to feed her family, send her children to school, and to pay for healthcare in emergencies too. Families and whole communities, as we've seen here, can be transformed by just that very small donation. So if you haven't already, go and book that coaching session, please. £25, help us to reach our target. We are nearly there. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. But Malin, a slight step change, I think. So now that we've had a little chat about Mrs Mkonde as a little bit of a backdrop for us, I think you and I both wanted to make sure that part of this amazing day of live events, we included a deep dive into 2 challenges that are faced by women like Mrs Mkonde in our network today, issues that are pretty topical and issues that you and I both care very passionately about. And those are gender equality and climate change. Could change the slide, Hayden. Both obviously interlinked. So I think we should probably start by explaining gender inequality and why we work with women. Malin.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off, the gender inequality is a challenge that the entire world is facing, So, but it is important to highlight that it is particularly tough in the countries where we operate, in the sense that it's very patriarchal society. So if you also add that up with the fact that the women that we work with live in extreme poverty, over 50% live in extreme poverty and over 70% live in poverty. So just that is also a result of gender inequality. Women are more likely to be poor, be the traditional structures of the culture in a country. So women are less likely to get access to an education or to employment. Many of the women with became mothers when they were teenagers themselves. Many of them had to drop out of school. That has an impact on their ability to get jobs or support themselves, as well as enshrined in law. So basically, women don't have land rights to the same extent as men do, which obviously 90% of the women that we work with are female farmers. So not owning the land that you're farming is really, really problematic. If their husband passes away, they don't have inheritance rights. So they will then have to leave their house and home. So these kind of issues perpetuates poverty for women, which is why women and girls are more likely to live in poverty. One of the big things is also that, just like everywhere in the world, women are taking the lion's share of caring responsibilities, caring for children or caring for elderly relatives or caring for vulnerable adults. That's, women do 75% of the unpaid care work in the home, which then means that they don't have as much time to actually generate an income to feed themselves.
And on that note,
further themselves in their career.
Yeah, and on that note, we know that actually investing in women is better for more people. It means that we can reach more people. Women reinvest 90% of every pound they earn back into the home and family life, which is, again, why we work with women.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I do have to say women are universally better at repaying loans. So for Microloan, it makes good business sense, because that means they repay the loan, and that means they can either take out another loan to grow their business, or another woman can get the opportunity to start a business. So yeah.
I wanted also to touch on the fact that women like Mrs Mkonde, as we've spoken about, become such a beacon of hope in their communities. And we see a lot of that, don't we? We see the way that more experienced entrepreneurs, like Mrs Mkonde, for example, they become like mentors to the newer, perhaps the younger women that we support. And that group dynamic is so important for the women empowerment piece. So did you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this ties in so nicely with the WLA as well. The whole piece on women actually supporting and, hyping other women, and also having women of different. So it's really a conversation last week with our CEO in Zambia, and he was raving about how he'd gone into a center meeting where, you know, where it's around 25 women who come together in a meeting. And he said it was just amazing to see the impact of the younger or less experienced entrepreneurs when they were talking to the more experienced ones and to the older ones, you know, and how that, you know, you could see how it's just fusing ideas and really like making them go, wow. And for a lot of the women in the communities we work with, they don't have a lot of female role models in business. They have female role models for other aspects of life, but just not for business. And this is also a really important part for women themselves to realize that they can have access to finance, and that they have the right to own things and to run a business and to be in charge of their own finances. And that's a massive, I mean, that's a total game changer, really, in terms of just the women's empowerment piece, which is, yeah.
And
really.
I think as well, having these female role models within the community ties really nicely into that incremental change that we look to achieve. You know, we don't jump into these very patriarchal societies, as you mentioned earlier, and you know, tell them how we think things should be run. You know, obviously we have to involve men in this conversation, and what better way, you know, to achieve gender equality than moving together, both men and women. So did you want to talk to us a little bit about the men, the husbands or the partners of some of the entrepreneurs in our network, and what that dynamic is sometimes like?
Yeah, and I mean, every relationship is different, right? Every household is different, so it's very difficult to generalize. But we do meet our local colleagues meet a lot of pushback from men who say you're upsetting the natural order of things. But you know, there's a way for us, and we have a responsibility to meet those challenges in a way that works within the context that we operate in. So it's a matter of actually saying, you know what, by giving access to finance for your wife, you're actually helping the entire family, and that removes the sole responsibility for you to be the one who brings income into the household. And generally, it is very warmly welcome. I did, it's 2.5 years ago, I went and did a whole research piece on just interviewing women and their husbands. Normally, I just interview the women, but I was like, I'm going to interview the husbands as well. Okay, so I've got to say, that research study was skewed. I'm just going to admit it, because obviously the men who wanted to talk to me were the ones who were really supportive of the women. But oh my gosh, I left every single interview just going, wow, because they were really, really like the biggest champions and cheerleaders of their wives, and just going, it's really amazing. She's changed this, she's built this business, you know. And also, a lot of the men actually said, whenever she's had a training session, she comes home and we sit down and then she teaches me, and I've learned so much from it, and, you know, really, really changing things. But that's one side of it. Obviously, there is a whole piece around, there's plenty of research that has been done on financial inclusion for women and the impact that that has a knock-on effect on domestic abuse. So we've actually looked into that piece as well, and we had the University of Edinburgh doing a research study for us to understand what are the domestic relationships, you know, like, and how are our work impacting what we do, because it is really complicated, right? We need to make sure that we are doing good and not actually doing unintentional harm in what we do. They actually found that because of our model and the fact that the men are actually invited to come and join the training sessions as well, and that we work within the cultural context in which we operate, the domestic relationships are actually improving, because all of a sudden the pressure is not all on the man, and the woman has a little bit more voice, you know. So that's really, again, really lovely. We have seen example of when women have to scale back their business because it takes up too much of their time, and their husband then has to take on a lot of a lot more of the domestic work. And in this society, that's in some families in this society, that's not something that's acceptable. And then we need to work with that woman to find a solution for her within the cultural context in which she lives. I can't bring my Swedish raging feminist values into this context. It doesn't work. I wouldn't have the right solutions. We need to listen to the women and to the people who live in these communities who know what's what.
Definitely. And that's exactly why our model is, our local colleagues going into these communities. When they first arrive, they're welcomed with drums to these huge centre meetings. And who's at those meetings? Men, women, children, the village chief. It's a whole community coming together to realise that actually empowering women and supporting women to become entrepreneurs will benefit everyone. And we do see a lot of men, husbands, working together with their women on the businesses. They'll go out and do the fishing and the woman will take the fish to the market, for example. And I mean, that sort of collaboration is definitely a win. It's a win for everyone. So let's have a slight step change here. Obviously, again, both of these issues are super interlinked, but climate change has obviously been on everyone's minds at them recently with, COP26 taking place in the last few weeks. I, for one, am super glad to see that there's a lot of media and public attention around it at the moment. But I think what we want to do today is talk a little bit about how climate change is actually affecting people living in rural regions of sub-Saharan Africa, the places that we work. Many of the women in our network are smallholder farmers, especially, as we know, the backdrop to this is that women are disproportionately impacted by climate change. So let's first touch on, Malin, extreme weather conditions. So cyclones, floods, droughts. Obviously, Cyclone Idai was in 2019 in Malawi. How does these huge extreme weather conditions, how does these emergencies and these crises affect the lives of women in our network?
So if we look at the cyclone in 2019 specifically, that was absolutely devastating, especially for families in the southern parts of Malawi, because their livelihoods and their homes were literally washed away. I mean, it's devastating. So the time that these women have spent to build up their livelihoods is basically gone. And that is, devastating. We saw, the longer term impact is that the crops that were in the fields, they were rotting, or some crops were washed away. The maize storage maize is the staple food. The maize storage they had in their homes were ruined. So it just had the knock-on effects for months and months and months, were that they were not, they weren't able to eat, And our staff, I have to say, our colleagues in Malawi during the cyclone were absolute heroes, because they were going out on motorbikes into the roads were washed away, and they were going out and helping clients, getting clients into safety, getting them into the refugee camps that was set up for displaced people, and really, really pushing through. We had 2 of our loan officers that were actually injured as a result of going into to help women in these communities.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but Hayden, could you please change the slide to the photos that we've got that were actually taken back sorry, we're having to skip through a few slides here. That's my fault for not prompting Hayden to change the slides. But this photo top left there, that is a woman in our network's home that has been washed away as a result of the 2019 cyclone.
Yeah, so, and below is the market. That's the local marketplace in one of the communities that were hit. And the other one is actually one of our colleagues. The guy with the Wellington boots is helping clients across the flooded roads.
So what, our piece, Microloan's piece amongst all of this is helping women to rebuild after this devastation. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we don't do emergency relief. So there are other organizations. So, for example, the women whose houses and lives were washed away, they went to refugee camps and they got shelter there and they got food packages. So this is a perfect example of if you were at the other session earlier today, it's showing how philanthropy and just donations are really important at an emergency relief, in an emergency relief context. However, once those emergency aid organizations leave, these women are left with nothing, and these families are left with nothing. So that's when Microloan steps in. So we're there to make sure that we catch them and help them rebuild and get back to a subsistence level again.
Yeah, I think that's also this is probably a really good time to signpost everybody to a really thought-provoking conversation that we hosted last month. So it included some of our senior leadership team from Zambia. Also, we had an advisor to the UN World Food Programme, and they did sort of a deep dive on how we can empower female farmers through finance or through knowledge, helping them to learn how to use apps and things that have weather predictions, which means they can then plan their crops and account for that, moving forward. So let's touch on what let's touch on this sort of conservation farming piece and how we help farmers, the female farmers in the network. 90% of the women in our network actually do some sort of farming activity, how we help them to farm sustainably, which is good for them and good for the planet as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we provide a lot of loans that are specifically for agriculture. And with that comes specific agricultural training. Surprisingly, a lot of the women do not farm in a sustainable way. So they deplete the soil. So for example, they will just overuse the soil. So one of the things that we help them with is basically it's conservation farming training to make sure that they can maximize the yields that they get. So for example, through crop rotation or non-disturbance of the soil and lots of good stuff that they do. We also help them to actually create organic fertilizer, so they don't have to buy fertilizer. We do help them buying fertilizer if that's what they need to boost their crops. And we also help them to be really, really careful when it comes to how they use chemicals on the land to make sure that they don't ruin the crop for next year. So really building a sustainable farming business and also helping them to see their farm as a business, not just as kind of a necessary means to an end, but something that they can actually grow and develop and enjoy as a business, and as a entrepreneurial venture, I would say.
And that chat that I mentioned that we hosted last month, we're going to pop the link to that in the chat box before the session ends today, so you can have a look and watch that. It was really, really a great conversation. So let's touch on, this is a little bit of a backward step. I know we were speaking about the extreme weather conditions and helping women to rebuild. Let's talk about how we build resilience. So the savings aspect of our work.
Yeah, so I've kind of mentioned it a couple of times today in the earlier sessions, but basically savings and building a savings behavior amongst really, really poor women is very important, because a lot of the women don't actually know how to save or what to save for. The whole concept is slightly alien for many of them. So we help them by basically helping them set savings goals, and when you attend one of these training sessions on savings, they all get either a leaf or a little pebble each, and then they're asked to visualize, what does this leaf visualize for me? What do I want to do if I manage to save enough money? And usually one of the first things is I want to send my kids to school. That's normally that leaf or that pebble is always there. And there's usually a pebble about getting a goat or getting some kind of livestock, basically asset accumulation, I guess you could call it in a fancy term. But yeah, and the third thing is usually to invest in their business, to grow their business so that they can see that there's movement and development for themselves and for their business and for their family, and that is really important. In a lot of ways, savings for the very, very extreme poor is more important than credit, than a loan. But the problem is the women need access to credit in order to get into a position when they can start saving. Yeah.
So this is another very opportune moment to mention the training. So the training we've had a little bit of conversation about already during this session and also in a few previous sessions today, but the big one today, which I cannot recommend enough that you all come along at 4 o'clock. Marlin and I had a wonderful conversation with our colleague Priska, who is based in Zambia. She is a loan and training officer in our Livingston branch. She is responsible for training and mentoring and coaching over 100 aspiring female entrepreneurs. So she delivers this amazing savings training, financial literacy training, how to budget, how to do market research, how to build a business that's going to build a better future for your family. And she is just an amazing woman. She actually recorded a video for us at just a typical day in the office on Monday, which is just the most uplifting video you will watch. I mean, you physically can't stop smiling when you're watching it. It's just so lovely. So we'll show you a little bit of that video as well when you come back and join us at 4 o'clock. But do come along. Priska's going to be live from Zambia, you know, the beauty of Zoom and these virtual events. And Marlin will be chatting with her about the highlights of her job and how this training is delivered, which is, spoiler alert, through song, dance and role play. And we may or may not have a small teaser coming your way from Priska as well, who sings beautifully, may I add. So we're right on time. Just wanted to wrap things up by saying, you know, just on behalf of the charity and the organisers behind the Coachathon, Marlin, Hayden, Sandra and I. Hayden can stop sharing now if you want. I mean, a lot of hard work and energy has gone into this. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you, you know, for helping us to change the lives of women like Mrs Mkonde, as we discussed earlier. So
I have a question.
Oh, go for it. Oh, let's open for questions.
You might be doing this at 4 o'clock, I don't know, but I would love you to share some of the challenges you've got coming up. I know you're like, well, we just do these. I was like, no, we have amazing coaches and clients who might want to get involved in a challenge or two. So can you speak from the heart about that? Is that going to be later, or do you want to share a page or something like that?
I am happy to talk about that right now, because in May, you can come with me and climb Mount Mulanje in Malawi. And once we get up and get down again, then we're going to go and visit a group of women. So then you'll actually
see. Is that in May, Malin? And what do you have to raise to get there?
The fundraising target is 1,500 per person. And then there's obviously, you've got to cover the cost of the trip and the flights as well. So it's once in a lifetime experience, because you'll never really get an opportunity to hang out with these fabulous women unless you go, I guess.
When is it in May? When's that one happening?
I want to say it's 23rd, but I
think it is.
Might be wrong. I don't actually have the date off the top of my head, because I'm going different dates than other people.
On the website. But yeah, I mean, imagine,
maybe you can share the link if you get a chance.
Imagine taking that £1,500 of your fundraising total and literally visiting the women that money is going to help. Like, when else can you do that? What an amazing opportunity. I mean,
give us another one in case people can't do that one.
Another one is the Zambezi challenge. I had a really great conversation with a coach who got so excited she could barely sit still. Like, she was like, I am doing this. So that's happening in October. And we're probably going to have 2 Zambezi rafting. It's white water rafting on the Zambezi River. It's going to be wild, I can tell you. A real challenge. It's the same fundraising target. Zambia is obviously a very different country than Malawi. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be super thrilling. We actually have a briefing about the Zambezi on, I want to say, this 8th or the 9th of December. I can share info about that as well with anyone who's interested.
Oh,
so, yeah.
They sound brilliant for other people to do. I think I prefer the mountain than the raging rivers of.
Me too, Sandra.
Yeah. I think I might be too far out my comfort zone, that one.
I wonder if we've got any coaches or coachees on the call who want to tell us about any sessions they've had, any feedback from the day. We want to hear.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah.
You don't know if they've all got the count. Oh, here's Kim, lovely Kim. We don't know if you.
Always got something to say. I put a comment in the chat earlier about one of my coaches is involved in financial services, and we were talking about the Coachathon and the work that the MicroLoan Foundation does to support women. And as I said in my chat comment, she was saying that women are so much better at managing longer term finance and appreciating risk levels and managing risk levels and leaving things alone to do what they do, and end up with much better returns in the long term. So it was interesting to hear that, because I think the perception is that men generally are king of the money.
Yeah, when you look at the research, it shows the very opposite.
Yeah.
Whether that's in terms of repaying their loans or managing their finances in general, women are much better at it. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. Not that you're a feminist or anything, Mark.
No.
Oh, awesome. Can I just do a quick thing as well for 3 o'clock? Because we've got our
Yes,
I was going to say that.
and well-being and careers with 3 more amazing speakers, authors, and coaches. And if you haven't donated yet, get your bloody purses out. And put
Should we do the fundraising total again? I love doing that. Hayden, do you mind sharing the screen? Sorry, Hayden is at our beck and call on this call. Sorry, Hayden.
That's no problem. I was just responding that we've got a lot of coaches emailing.
Last minute emails. So far, guys, so far in this one amazing day, with thanks to Sandra for spearheading it. Honestly, we could just, you have really, you know, this is all down to you. So thank you. We've raised so far £18,525, which means that 741 women will get that startup loan to build a business. They, you know, we're starting journeys like Mrs Mkonde's today for 741 women, which means that an estimated 2,964 children will have increased access to food, healthcare, and school. So thank you, and please donate if you can.
We've had 3 coaching sessions bought in the time that we've been speaking.
Love this.
Oh, that's so good.
Brilliant. Oh, fab. See you guys in a while. I'm going to go make a cup of tea. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.